Come here, Peter. Do the plates, will you? Do you remember where the plates go? Can you put them on each thing?
We always say the 1 in a million. Yeah. If there's a 1 in a million chance for something to happen, Peter's always that one. You know, he takes it for the team, is how we say it.
Peter is probably like any other kid who's in second grade, and he's very curious, mischievous, as we said, for sure. He's very loving, and you know, for the most part, what I love about him is that he just has a love for life.
I think it's Peter's resilience that's helped him get through all that he has gone through. I think that's just a God-given gift that he's been given. I don't know where it came from. I don't know that any of us would have been able to go through what he has and still bounce back up with a smile on his face.
Well, I think one of the best things that Catherine ever did, and later I got on board, but it was her idea. One of the best things that she ever did was to make that decision in the beginning to say, look, we have a child that God has given us that is different than other children, different than your brothers and sisters. And we have a very special responsibility. And so we set that expectation with our kids right off the bat that there's going to be some challenges, but you know, what we have here is not ordinary, is special.
It was almost from the beginning, we were treated as if there was something very wrong with Peter in a very negative manner. We knew prenatally that Peter had Down syndrome, but we also knew he had holes in his heart. And so we really were trying to prepare more from a medical perspective. I think that whole idea of services and therapies and everything else just seemed so down the road. We were just trying to say, we want him to even live.
When we meet people and they find out Peter's story and some of the things that he goes through, everything from holes in his heart, so he had heart surgery, and the fact that he went through leukemia and had to go through chemotherapy, and they're like expecting, you know, he must be, 15, 20 years old, and no, he's 8 years old. Yeah. And they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that.
So I was calling doctors around the country, trying to make sure that we were getting the best care for Peter and that we had everything set up. But Peter rushed into the world about 10 days early. We've got all these specialists in the room ready to kind of, rescue Peter, and he's laying there happy as can be from day one. But we did have a lot of health challenges starting at that moment in time. He couldn't breathe properly. We found out that he had severe pulmonary hypertension. His cardiologist at the time said it was the most severe case in a neonate that he had ever seen. At 7 days old, we were still at the hospital down here, and the nurse came in and said, Peter took a turn for the worse last night. We're not sure if he's going to make it through the day. We need to do the flight for life up to Denver. And I think one of the things that, you always find those little moments in life that you hold on to, or those words of advice that somebody gives you along the way that you get to hold on to, that helps put things in perspective, or, helps you work through some of the challenges. And it was actually when Peter had come home from the hospital the first time. So at 5 weeks, he came home, and he was considered a failure to thrive. He had the Down syndrome, he had the holes in his heart, he had all of this stuff going on. We had tubes all over him for everything, alarms going off in the middle of the night constantly. We would sit there watching these machines and upping the oxygen, going, got to make this alarm stop somehow. And it was such a huge responsibility to feel like we had this little baby and we had to keep him alive. I mean, we hadn't gone through that. We were used to having healthy children. But I remember one time he had a nurse that would come from NTSOC, and she'd come every day to weigh him, and feeling overwhelmed. And I remember I started to tear up, and I said, it's just not fair. It's not fair that Peter has to go through all of this. He's so little and he has to go through all of this. And I'll never forget her words. And she said, this isn't hard for him. This is hard for you. He knows low life different than the one he's living. You're the one that knows what's different. And it changed my perspective completely. Peter was about 3 years old when he was diagnosed with leukemia. And I'd say that was probably some of the scariest time for us. We all know what cancer is and stuff, but when you're looking at your small child who's just learned how to walk, is just learning to do those things that you take for granted with a healthy child, to then realize that now they have to, overcome this next challenge of their life, was really challenging. Peter's therapists, they've been with him pretty much since he was born. Yeah. So his physical therapist started with him when he was about 8 months old, but his speech therapist that he had and his occupational therapist pretty much since he came home from the hospital. So they've gone through all of the journey with us, and they've seen Peter in his highs of highs and his lows of lows when it comes to his health. But they gave him that constant. They would come to our home and not overwhelm us, but it was almost just at the right time, come in and share the information that we needed that made that journey smoother for us. Because I think if we hadn't had that support, we would have been flying in the dark. We still have the stuffed animals that they brought him that kept him company during that period of time. I mean, they were very emotionally invested in what was going on with Peter, and I know it was hard for them to see him as sick as he was. We know that they were also invested in everything that Peter's gone through, and I think for him, he likes going to the NTSOC office and walking down the hallway because, I mean, he's just a little superhero when he's there, right? I mean, he walks down the hallway and everybody's like, hi, Peter. You know, that for him is that sense of family and that sense of belonging, to go somewhere and to have people know your name.
You're talking about a family, you get an opportunity not just to deal with the staff, but when we have those group activities, then you get that opportunity to meet others that you can commiserate with. They may have the same situation. You may be going through a tough time and they could be there to help you. But at the same time, we like to be able to give back, and there are other people that are going through some of the things that we had to go through with Peter, especially in his early years, that we can hopefully give some counsel to if possible.
But so much of it is care for the whole family. So I think that's what makes NTSOC unique, and I think it's what makes the individuals that work there unique, is the fact that they recognize that for every child with special needs, every child with some form of disability, that it's the whole family. We love all of our kids and we've enjoyed all that they've done. But Peter's taught us not to take anything for granted. He's taught us that sometimes even the things that we thought came naturally can be really, really hard to accomplish. Ready, Peter?
We and
NTSOC, we are family.